I'm Larry Cass of the Sergeant Lessig Museum of Fine Arts in Hinckley, Ohio. It's April 18th, 2004, and we're in the Lorraine Avenue studios of world-famous sculptor and artist Clarence Van Duzer. How did it all begin with you?
It was in elementary school, and in our elementary school at that time, all kids had to wear a necktie. If you didn't wear a necktie, you had to have one made, and I was selected as the artist who made the neckties.
Were there any of your teachers in grade school, high school, junior high school that saw your drawings and saw some of the things that you made and said, "You know, young man, you have a rare talent. Did you ever consider a career in art? Did anybody ever point you in that direction?"
No. No, I didn't, other than my, no one said it in those terms, Larry. They did not discourage, and when one doesn't discourage, a kid just keeps moving, you know? He just keeps going until someone either whacks his knuckles or wraps him behind the head. Yeah. I went to West Tech High School here in Cleveland, and West Tech had an art department. West Tech was a technical school. It also had a college preparatory program. But I took the technical program, which was majoring in art. And so I had art 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 years. And I studied with Paul and Jean Hewlin, who were graduates from the old School of Art, Cleveland School of Art, and who were just magnificent draftsmen, figure draftsmen, and who studied at the Slade School in London, and they spread that talent throughout their teaching at Tech. So there was nothing that was skipped from junior high to high school. It was just a gradual, normal transition.
Now, why was it so important as someone aspiring to be an artist to learn how to draw well? Why must drawing and drawing well and draftsmanship precede painting?
To my way of thinking, everything is based on drawing. Even ceramics is based on drawing. The sensitivity that one acquires and the observation one acquires through drawing is inherent in every visual piece of art. And there is no question that drawing, usually drawing the figure, in the beginning, drawing the figure, is a foundation that can carry anyone through portrait painting, through industrial design, through graphic design, through textiles, through weaving. But when it comes to the human figure, the subtleties, you know, and the proportions, and the just to allow that drawing to reflect the dynamics of that object, the figure out in front, is the training, really, to be able to see that, to be able to sense it, to be able to then mechanically, you can do a lot mechanically, you know, but it all happens up here. See? When I left West Tech, I got a scholarship. I entered the National Scholastics, which most kids do in public schools or high schools when they graduate. And so I won a key, which was an honor, and also a scholarship to the Institute of Art, another scholarship. So I had 2 years of paid tuition at the Cleveland Institute of Art. I really can't put my finger on it, but I had to leave.
So where did you go? What did you do?
I noticed there was a bulletin on the bulletin board. Room, board, and tuition. Cranbrook Academy of Art. Submit portfolio, your work, so on. So I did. I got all my stuff together because back when I was a kid at home, I had the whole upstairs of the house as my studio. I had no idea if I was going to go to school or not, because when I left the end of that year, I didn't have any scholarship. So I asked my mother and dad, I want to go out west. During the summer, I wanted to just go west. So I had a black suitcase, one of those cardboard things, that square cardboard things. I wrote on it, West, in white paint. And I had $17.37 in my pocket. So I went out and I began hitchhiking. Well, I ended up as far as Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, in the meantime, I had no idea what was happening with Cranbrook. I had no idea. I just knew that I wasn't going back to the Institute, and the only thing I could do was hope for a scholarship. And that's what I got. I called Mother, and Mother said, Western Union just arrived. And I said, Mother, open it, tell me. So she opened it, and it was that I had been awarded the room, board, and tuition fellowship to Cranbrook Academy of Art for a year. It was 300 acres of beautiful land, fountains, and Carl Millis was the sculptor who was there, and Zoltan Sepeši was the painter, and L.L. Saarinen was the architect. And those were the three people who were there teaching. I entered to study under Zoltan Sepeši specifically. When I entered Cranbrook, I, of course, had my easel and my paints and whatever, and I walked into this beautiful studio space that I had at Cranbrook, and I looked around and I had no idea what in the hell I would do. When I left the Cleveland Institute of Art, or School of Art, or while I was there, it was just you painted from objects. You painted from the figure or drew from the figure. You painted from a still life or you drew from still lifes. So it was always working from an object, always something in front of you and nothing truly creative, imaginative, I should say. In working with Zoltan Sepeši, I had a studio, which Zoltan had his studio on the same level in the same building. Zoltan was the most incredible critic. One of his great attributes was that he was able to use the English language with such depthness that he could, in a few words, just point out something in your work that was so clear and so pointed, and you knew exactly what he was thinking and what he meant. So I figure that what I got from Zoltan primarily was this sense of keenness in observing works. But as an educational institution, it was incredible, because not only because of the teaching, the exposure, it was the general environment that was conducive to just creativity. I was in my studio Sunday afternoon, and there was listening to the New York Philharmonic was on every Sunday afternoon, and I think it was the Texaco hour, I believe it was during that time, and it was interrupted, and Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. Wow. Everything stopped at Cranbrook. Everything stopped. Well, the president of Cranbrook at the time was a retired captain of the Navy. To him, everybody out. All fellas at that age out. No more scholarships, no more at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we cleared out, I cleared out, came back here to Cleveland. I wanted to continue my education, so I had to get a job also, and of course, with the war on. So I got a job in Ohio Tool, and I was an inspector of bullet dies and punches. In the meantime, I had enrolled at the Cleveland Institute of Art, Cleveland School of Art. I saw my buddy who was the dean, Otto Egge, and Otto was always, he and I always were buddies. He planned a degree program for me in art education. I organized a 13-week program of art studies for high school. I decided I was, teaching was going to be my direction. So I did my teacher's training at East Tech. Fella from West Tech, kid from West Tech, going to East Tech to do his teacher's training. After I graduated from Case Western, I was awarded a $1,000 traveling fellowship from the Cleveland Institute of Art. I was selected as the top student in my graduating class at Case Western. And so I had a good bio that I sent off to Yale. And I was awarded a scholarship at Yale for my master's degree. So I spent 2 years at Yale. So when I was there, Otto Egge wrote me a letter. And Otto said in this letter, he said that you get back to Cleveland as soon as you can, because I know that you can be the art director of the Shaker Heights Public Schools. Well, right away, I wanted my degree. I wanted the extra year. Well, the Lord was on my side, because that would have been a disaster. I have avoided public school teaching, high school teaching and all that with it like a plague. I have avoided it because I just knew that I knew too many good artists who were involved in teaching that kind of a system that just killed them, really. So I finished my education, and he wrote me and he said, we have a job for you here at the Institute of Art.
What year would that have been?
This was in 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a job for you here. You would be teaching Bill Eastman's, during the summer, Bill Eastman's composition class. You'd be teaching the beginning of art history, and you'd be teaching a figure drawing class for this summer. So, hey, wonderful. So I left and came back to Cleveland, and I had a job during the summer. Come the regular semester, I was offered a drawing class, sophomore figure drawing. I thought, hey, that sounds good to me. You know? So it followed my high school stuff, followed what I always believed, that drawing was the foundation for it. So it was beautiful. I did sophomore figure drawing for 17 years at the Institute, and then I devised a program. I got bored teaching. I got bored teaching figure drawing, and I must say that I enjoyed it. I mean, I really enjoyed teaching. Teaching just was so fantastic to me. But figure drawing became a drone. So I took a semester off and I came up with a program that was called creative drawing. Now, creative drawing had nothing to do with objects. Nothing. Before, you draw from a model, or you draw from a teacup, or you draw from whatever, an object. But creative drawing, you work with ideas, see? And the ideas were abstract. See? They were concepts, but they were abstract in essence. So that's what I taught for the remaining 16 years.
Was that the beginning of your interest in abstract art about that time?
That was absolutely it, Larry. That's what it was. And it's interesting how that happened, that it was during that time when I got so bored with teaching figure drawing. When Cleveland Hopkins International Airport in 1976, at Cleveland Hopkins Airport in 1976, when it was being redone, it then was named International Airport. And it was the 50th year of commercial flight out of Cleveland Hopkins. So that's why it's a celebration, and it's global. Those are the two things that I worked with. So these arms or whatever are gestures of, you know, and this is a gesture of flight or whatever. And so, but what everybody has missed, it's interesting, when I turn this over, here is a, see this? It's an airplane. See this tail? Yeah, here, it's a nose. Do you pick that up?
Yes.
Pick it up? No? And that's interesting because I hit upon it in the process of creating it. I didn't set out to do that at all. That form happened. It just happened. And I kept looking at that on the truck, because it passed my studio as they were on a flatbed taking it over to storage before it was installed at the airport. And I saw this. It's in the newspaper. It was reproduced in the newspaper. And I saw that and I thought, my God, there's an airplane. The damn thing was a plane. In the process of presenting this to the Fine Arts Committee, which everything all public sculpture had to be presented to the Fine Arts Committee. The Fine Arts Committee was a collection of architects, artists, museum directors, and what have you, who made the decision as to what really happened with architecture or buildings in town sculpture. However, it wasn't a law-abiding body. It was a suggestion body. They were volunteers. So this was presented. They looked at this, and you could see right away, down the tube. Rejected it. Van Duzer, go back to your drawing board. Right? And so I got up, and Dick Bowen was, I got to hand it to Dick Bowen. Dick Bowen was the architect, and Dick Bowen stood behind me all the way. And so I got up and I said, this is my concept, I believe in it, and I want to present it to the Planning Commission. It was my option, I could do that. Oh, you don't do that. Oh, no. I mean, the Fine Arts Committee already passed its judgment on it. And so a time was set up to have this meeting. So McFall, Gerald McFall, who is still around, he was on this thing. And there were others who were on it. And I was in there with this, was on the table in front. And said, hey, you know, what's the matter with this? Nothing wrong with it. It was a general liking of it. So here comes a courier handing out brown envelopes, the large envelopes, to everybody that was there. And in the envelopes were copy from the Plain Dealer newspaper. And the editor was Tom Vail. Tom Vail he wrote in his column that if the Fine Arts Committee or if the Planning Commission accepted this, it would be a blow to the Fine Arts Committee and destroy them, and they would be, well, on and on. He wrote this. I suggest that the Planning Commission vote against it. Went on. Oh, yeah. So McFall's reading this, and McFall's at the end of the table down here. McFall got up and he said, if I had not seen this model, he said, I would have voted for it anyway. Nobody's going to tell me how to vote. And they passed the whole damn thing through, and I was in business. And that's what happened. That's what got this in.
Well, here we see something. This is a chicken head cast in lead, and what could that possibly mean to an artist? And here I see your name on there, that you were a recipient of a Lead Chicken Award in 1995. What does that mean?
It started out as an article in the newspaper. Do you remember the name of Mariani, who was art editor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer years ago? And he called me one day at school. I was in my class. He said, hey, Van, I understand the faculty's going to boycott the May show. And I said, I don't know anything about that, but I do know that there are a chicken among us. So we talked a little bit, okay. But as far as boycott, I never heard of anybody boycotting it. There may be some who don't and whatever. So, okay. That was on a Friday. Saturday's newspaper, quote, Van Duzer calls faculty chicken. Oh boy. Sunday, my phone rang, and it was Bill McVeigh. And he took this personally and read the riot act to me. He just absolutely buried me. Bill, I'm sorry. I didn't mean you at all. This dealt with the painting faculty, with the drawing and painting department. And he went on. So I said, well, I'll be at the critique on Monday. I walked right up to Bill McVeigh to shake his hand and say, I'm sorry. He wouldn't shake hands. Now that's rare for Bill McVeigh. And so Joe McCullough was standing over in the corner. Joe McCullough was president of the Institute. So I saw him. He was walking slowly around the room and came over. And I still was apologizing to Bill. And Joe said, I'd like to see you in my office. So I said, okay, when we're done. And I went down, and he was in his office behind his desk. And he started to talk. I don't even remember He was so upset that Bill McVeigh had called him on Sunday and told him about this. Now, Joe said, I didn't see it, but if it's what Bill McVeigh said it was, then I'm getting to the bottom of this. So I said, good. I'm going to call Mastriani, and I'm going to have him come over here, and we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss this. In the meantime, Frank Myers, who was teaching drawing also, was called by Mastriani at the same time. And Frank, he didn't have anything to say. So when Joe called, when Mastriani was to arrive, Frank Myers and I walked downstairs together, and there was Mastriani in the hall. So called to him and wait up for us. So we all three walked in the same time, Joe's office. So Joe sat behind his desk. He didn't get up, say, go to hell, kiss my butt, nothing. He just sat there. Mastriani sat in a chair over here, Frank sat here, and I sat here. And so I didn't say anything. It wasn't my party, it was his party. He called the meeting, so it was a silence, no one talking. So pretty soon it got so dense, you know how those times are, and that he then began to talk about this. The reason we're together here because of that chicken comment about the faculty and so on and whatever. Mastriani got up and he said, if I had known you called me here to air your dirty laundry, I wouldn't have come. Well, Mastriani got up and left. I left following Mastriani, and Frank followed me. Well, I had a birthday coming up. Joseph Jankowski searched around for a chicken. He couldn't find one in town here, but he did get a lead from Sears Roebuck that they probably would have one in the warehouse in Chicago. Jan called, they wired the chicken. Jankowski signaled this to the guys, and in the faculty room they had a party for me, birthday party. And this chicken was the gift, okay? And so I kept that chicken for years. I had it in all my moves from one studio to another, but finally it got broken and the legs fell off and this kind of thing that happens. But I did salvage the plastic head. The idea behind it was that when we would get in the faculty room and discuss what we're going to be discussing at the faculty meeting, we'd have everything all worked out, that we were going to vote for this or we're going to say this or whatever, and we'd stick together. Well, I was the big mouth in the thing, and I shouldn't say that, I was the leader. And so I'd bring up this thing thinking my buddies are behind me. We all agreed. And you could hear a pin drop. I look around, where are my buddies? They're all under the table. None of them are backing me, you know? So this lead chicken was in honor of them. So we started this lead chicken dinner and decided that there would be an award. And the award would be this, a piece of barn wood, 16 inches long, 12 inches, with a plaque and a casting in metal. So that's how this started. And every year we would have a get-together. All of us would get together, and at my studio, 99% of the time was always at one of my studios, wherever the hell I was. We'd have a ball, just really great. So that is the story of the lead chicken. And it's on display now, the mold the plastic mold that this was made from. Everything is over at Beck Center now in a case on exhibit.
Has anyone had an award since 1995, no, or you were the last one?
I was the last one.
You think they'll pick up on it again?
However, I don't know. I don't know.
Tell us more about the Orchard Lake project and how that came about.
Larry, that was an amazing project. The buddy that I talked about, Joe Jankowski, who did the chicken, got the chicken and so on. Joe was a seminarian at the St. Cyril and Methodius Seminary in Orchard Lake, Michigan. So he'd be out doing his walk, and he'd supposed to be with his book, good book, and doing his studying of the good book. Jan would be there drawing. So the Monsignor came to him and said, Joe, you could do more as an artist than you would as a priest. So he encouraged Jan to leave, and Jan went to the Art Students League in New York and studied painting. He found himself teaching in a college in Tennessee somewhere. And then finally he got this job at the Institute, and he taught for 35 or 38 years. The Monsignor put a search on for Jankowski. He got lost in the shuffle when he left the seminary. He went to Art Students League and then whatever. And so they didn't know where Jankowski was. So they put a call into the Institute and found Jan. And so Jan made contact with them, and they called him up to Orchard Lake, and they wanted him to be their art consultant for a new chapel that was going in. So Jan called me, said, Van, are you interested? I said, hell yeah, Jan, you know that. So I said, I've never done anything like that before, but I'll try it. So that's when I began to work on the apostles. Jan did a stained glass window in back of the chapel. I did the corpus figure, which was 7 feet high and 7 feet across from hand to hand. And then the 12 apostles, which was over life size. I made an oval for a head. And I stood in front of a mirror and measured distance between here and here, then the length of the nose from here to here, and I'd make notes on my oval, on this drawing, and across and from here, and all these associations where the ear came and so on, and that was my model for these heads. I just took a piece of metal and copper, and I began just building and brazing and putting them together. And I still swear to this day that there was someone else on my shoulder giving me guidance. I'm not kidding, because I was aware of it then. There's no reason on God's green earth that I could have had the ability or the background or whatever to do that. But I still attribute drawing to being able to do this, really. It took 5 years to do, and it was a terrific experience. And putting up the Madonna, I did the hands on site. It's still up there. They love it. It looks good.
The whole thing must have been like a religious experience.
It had to be.
Like a happening.
It had to be.
Incredible story.
Yeah. It truly had to be.